Hello everyone. Today in this video, we are going to understand how to make an introduction. Introduction is something that we use when we meet somebody for the first time. There are many places where we use an introduction. So we are going to look at what are the different places where we introduce ourselves, how many kinds of introductions are there, and what should we include in these kind of introductions. So coming to the session, what are the places where we introduce ourselves? The most common one is an interview. It could be a job interview. It could be a college interview. It could be even your first interview. So that is the first question that comes. Please introduce yourself, or please tell me something about yourself. Then it could be a job change interview. Okay, when you're shifting from one job to another and you face an interview, there also you're often asked to introduce yourself. When you're meeting a business client, somebody with whom you do business, when you're meeting him for the first time, you have to introduce yourself. That's another occasion where we use an introduction. When you join a college or when you join an office, on the first day, you introduce yourself to the colleagues and the peer group. The people who are going to study with you, people who are going to work with you, you're going to use your introduction to introduce yourself. When you meet new people in an informal environment, it is normally when you go to a gathering or you go to a party or something, and there are people whom you don't know. So these people you have to meet, and when you meet, you introduce, you tell them about yourself. That is also a kind of introduction. And then when you're meeting an informal group of people, for example, you're meeting a group of friends, and there are some friends with whom you're not familiar with. So you introduce yourself, you take their introduction, you know each other. That is also one kind of an introduction. So if I divide this into formal and informal, we see that the first three ones are very, very formal. The next two are slightly less formal. And the last one is an informal introduction. So introduction can basically be divided into two types, one formal introduction and the other one is informal introduction. So what is formal introduction and what should be included in there? Formal introductions should contain past, present, and future, because these are the things, these are the time zones where we live. We have done something in the past, we are doing something in the present, and we are going to do something in the future. So a formal introduction should cover these three areas. You should talk about how have you contributed. If it's a job interview, you should tell how you have contributed to the previous organization and how have you contributed to your college batch, to your college. So you can use your contributions in your introduction and tell about your how have you contributed. You should divide the time in such a manner that the introduction brings about the best in you. There are many things that we are going to say. So you divide your time so that you talk more about the good things in you. The content should be such. Now, this is very important. It should be such content which gives rise to the next question, because it's just the start of a conversation. Okay, so the interview is not a conversation, not a question answer session. It is a conversation. So it should give rise to the next questions and take the conversation ahead. You should talk about those things which you want to talk in an interview. Your introduction should talk about those things that you want to talk about. Okay? If you want to talk about your extracurricular activities, you should talk more on that. If you want to talk about your academics, you should talk about that. If you want to talk about your trainings and internship, you should spend more time talking about those things which you want to talk. Some things that you can include in a formal introduction is your achievements, curricular achievements, extracurricular achievements, both can be included in this. Your trainings and your work experience. Okay, if you had some trainings, if you've had some work experience, what have you learned? What did you do in your work experience? Those things can be talked about in a formal interview. And then You should have your future goals and how are you working towards achieving them. Past, present और future तीनों हो गए इसके अंदर, ठीक है. So going to the informal interview, ये normally थोड़ा सा informal introduction, ये normally थोड़ा सा छोटा होता है, ठीक है. This is shorter than the formal one. And what can you can start with a greeting, your name and what do you do. It could be something like, hello everyone, my name is Ajay and I am a trainer. It could start something like this. And then you can talk about what do you like to do. I like to watch art movies. And then you can talk about your hobbies. One of my hobbies is painting. One of my hobbies is photography. Okay, so you can start with a greeting, your name, what do you do, then what do you like to do, and tell about your hobbies. So informal introduction relatively thoda sa chota hota hai as compared to the formal ones. You should always remember, whether it's a formal interview or an informal interview, you should always remember that introduction is a start of a conversation. Okay? Like I said, interview is not a question answer session, it's a conversation. So it should start that conversation. You should tell about yourself and also have some room for the other person to tell about himself or herself, because conversation is always two ways. Okay? So जब दोनों लोग बात करते हैं, then the conversation happens. Use connectors while switching from one area to another. Now this is very important. For example, if you're talking about your academics, so I finished my schooling from such and such school and then I joined college. Now coming to my extracurricular achievements, now ये phrase जो मैंने use किया, now coming to, is basically a connector. It separates the two portions. जब आप अपने academics खत्म करके अपनी extracurricular activities पे जाते हैं, तो you are using a connector. One of the advantages of connectors is the person who is listening to you knows that now you're going to talk about a different area and he starts paying more attention to it. Another important thing here is the gestures, especially in a face-to-face interview. When you have a face-to-face introduction, when you're introducing yourself, sitting in front of someone, it is important that you take care of your gestures. So there are some gestures which I've tried to put. Now look at this gesture. It's a wave, it's a hand wave. Okay. So hand wave is considered to be an informal gesture. Okay. And look at the words that he has used. Hi, hello. These are informal words. Okay. So this can be used in an informal introduction when you're meeting your friends, when you're meeting your people in an informal environment. You can use these words, and a formal one is definitely a handshake. Okay? You shake your hands and then you wish the time. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time is. Okay, so the one on your left side is formal and one on the right side is informal. Now coming to some things that you should avoid doing in an introduction. One is, don't start with, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about myself. No, it's not a good start. Okay? Because you thank somebody only at the end. You don't start with thank you. Okay, so don't start with a phrase like thank you for giving me an opportunity. Okay. Another thing that you should avoid is, as you know, my name is Ajay. No, it's not right. Because sometimes it so happens that a question is asked, okay, Ajay, tell me about yourself. And then you say, as you know, my name is Ajay. It sounds rude. Okay? You can always start with, sir, I come from the cleanest city of India, Indore. You start with that. Okay? Don't start with, as you know, my name is Ajay. थोड़ा सा rude लगता है वो. Okay? Should avoid talking about your weakness. Because it is a positive thing. An introduction or an interview is a positive environment, and weaknesses are negative traits. Okay, so we should not talk about anything negative in that positive. Let the question come. The question will come. Okay, tell me one of your weaknesses or two of your weaknesses, and then we shall address them. But try avoiding that, talking about in an introduction. Don't talk too much about your family background because you're introducing yourself. Unless your family is politically influential or you belong to a freedom fighter family or something, then you can talk a little bit about it. Otherwise, avoid talking too much about your family. Do not use complex vocabulary. This is something that I have seen. Don't use words just by reading them. If you're not very sure about the meaning of the word, avoid using them because it can lead to disasters. Use simple words, simple to understand, to express yourself. Okay. So with this, I hope you have gathered a few points in order to make your introduction, and try making it and practice that. Have a great introduction.